with your host, Sister A. Legree, providing information and support. I think that was fine. Providing information and support while encouraging hope and faith. You can find out more about us by logging on to our website at igbattmho.org. Again, we're here talking about mental health issues. You can log on to our website at igbatt.com, and you can also get one of our t-shirts which says "Make Hope an Option." Please log on to our website, and we're offering this as a gift. We had the shirts before, but now we actually have the sweatshirts. If you're interested, please log on to the website, and for the first 50 people who will email us, we'll send you out a sweatshirt free. If not, everybody else will have to, we're asking if you can pay for it. So Make Hope an Option sweat. Before, like I said, we had the t-shirt. So again, because that's what we believe. Our purpose is, we're talking about providing information and support while encouraging hope and faith. And we do that by making hope an option. Everyone has to understand Jesus Christ has come that we might have life and life more abundantly. As part of that life, we're looking at spirit, soul, and body. We try to speak to all of the issues, okay? We talk about here mental health disorders, just like a medical doctor would talk about diabetes, cancer, or any other disorder. Mental illnesses or brain illnesses, that's what we're talking about. If you're talking about someone who may have signs and symptoms, or someone who is playing games, or whatever the case is, then we're not talking about them. Or if you're talking about someone who is purely having a spiritual issue, okay? Now, we do believe that just like anything, spirituality, demonic infiltration, whatever you want to call it, can impact the brain, can impact our physical bodies, but that doesn't take away from the fact that our bodies do and can get sick, and sometimes they do need a physician. That doesn't mean that we put all our faith in the physician or in the medication. Our faith, of course, is in Jesus Christ, but we are flexible enough that whatever way He chooses to heal us or to deliver us, to set us free, that we're open to that. Some of us, we'll pray. I'm talking about Christians, where our healing may come on this side while we're alive, and for some of us, healing will come on the other side in death. But we do believe that Jesus Christ is Lord and Savior, and that He can heal, but we trust Him enough to know that He knows what He's doing with our bodies, okay? Log on to our website, igbatt.com. Please log on to our YouTube channel as well. We just not recently, but we really kind of started paying attention to that more, because we feel that it's a need to do that. So if you could go on to our YouTube channel, igbattmho, if you put that in, and subscribe, right? View a video and subscribe. That will be helpful to us. Also, email us, igbatt1@aol.com. Log on to our website. It's getting better all the time. Mental health outreach, igbatt.com. Today, we're January, the first month of January, and I wanted to talk about some of the mental health issues or things that have come up in the news. One of the things I wanted to talk about was Daryl Brooks. Now, some of you may say, who is Daryl Brooks? Daryl Brooks was the gentleman, if you're in America, you may remember around Christmas time, I think it was right before Christmas, there was, I think it was right before Christmas, I don't think it was Christmas Day, I may have to bring it up, so I can get the right time. But there was a Christmas parade, right? And what he did, Daryl Brooks, he was the 39-year-old man who drove his car into the Christmas parade, okay? And 5 victims were killed. Well, 6 victims were killed in this attack. Some people call it a terrorist attack. It happened in Milwaukee. Well, his mother wrote a letter, and she sent to the news media. And I wanted to share the letter. First of all, my heart goes out to their victims, their families. I don't think Christmas will not be the same for a long time. I'm so sorry that this had to happen to them. My heart goes out to, it was a young boy as well. I think the youngest person, let me see, the youngest child was a child. He was the, it doesn't say, but I know he was a young child, a sixth victim, a child. I think he was under the age of 12, if I'm correct. I could be wrong. But, yeah. And I know there was some outrage because this gentleman, Daryl Brooks, had been in prison, right? Looks like he has a long history of going in and out of prison, but he was in prison, in jail, and he was released on like a really low bail. And the thought was, well, if this guy was still in jail, maybe this stuff would not have happened, okay? I wanted to talk about the letter that his mom wrote. Again, and again, this is a tough situation to be in when you are the parent of a person who has caused so much harm to everyone else, to other people. So my prayers definitely kind of go out to her. But my purpose for this is not really to bash anyone, but I just wanted to share something because we talked about this before several times on one of these broadcasts. The importance of getting treated. We talked about mental illnesses. We know that everything is not a mental illness. We do know that. We do know that people have personalities, right? So they're what's called personality disorders. So a person, when we talk about mental illnesses, we're talking about, even though personality disorders are under the umbrella of mental illnesses, they are not like psychotic disorders. And we talked about this before. Psychotic disorders are those disorders. Psychosis means being out of touch with reality, right? And there are certain diseases, certain illnesses where psychosis is center stage. Schizophrenia being one of them, bipolar, then you have psychotic disorder, then sometimes you'll have the some of the substance abuse as well. But when we talk about personality disorder, it's a little different because we're not talking about psychosis. We talk about a personality disorder, and then sometimes a person may not have a personality disorder per se, but it's their personality. So it's hard when you kind of get into that to kind of differentiate between, okay, this is just this person doing this. This person had enough wherewithal to know what they were doing, and that's where you get into where the psychiatrists and the judges and everybody try to figure out, was this person psychotic or at that moment? Because a person can be out of touch with reality now and not be out of touch with reality tomorrow. So there's a lot of things that kind of go into that, right? Mental illnesses are brain illnesses that are characterized by changes in a person's thinking, mood, or behavior, and that are accompanied by significant distress or impairment in functioning. And I'm reading from our Thoughts from a Social Worker little booklet that we put together. You can download free of charge. It's on our website, okay? So why do people become ill? We talk about that as well. But one of the things that we mention when we talk about a severe mental illness, we know relapse is going to happen. And let's talk about our responsibility as a loved one, or as the person with the mental illness, or as a society. When we know someone who has a mental illness and has a tendency, or who could have a tendency to become psychotic, what is our responsibility? I think I talked before about if you're the person with the illness, right, it's important that you realize that you have to manage your illness. Just like diabetes has to be managed, hypertension has to be managed, any other disease has to be managed, i.e. if you have to take medication, you're responsible for taking them on time. If you have to eat right, you need to be responsible for eating right, okay? These are the responsibility that goes along with managing your illness. It's the same thing about a mental illness. If you're diagnosed with a mental illness, you have a responsibility to manage that illness. Now, we do know that once a person gets into that realm of psychosis, it's kind of difficult for them to kind of manage it. But that's where other people around them come into, become helpers. Because if you have a loved one and you know that person has a mental illness, it's important for you to get involved before something happens, right? You want to know your loved one's symptoms. You want to know when things begin to change with them. You want to begin to have that conversation. Ideally, you want to, when, I talk about how a person, if they go into the hospital and then they come out, and that's usually the best that they've been for a while, Start there. Let that be ground zero. Start having that conversation with them now. Say, okay, let's put together not a treatment plan, or a treatment plan you can, but let's put together a crisis plan. Let's look at what does it look like when you're not feeling well, mentally well. What happened when you went into the hospital? Get that person to talk about, to identify their signs and symptoms. Begin to have a conversation, while they're feeling okay, while they're not actively psychotic. And then as you begin to see that person becoming more and more unwell, then that's when we as a society and family members have an obligation to act. Okay? Let me read this letter. His mom says, "The Lord spoke to my heart this morning and said to me, it's time to speak." And she said, "I've been contacted by numerous media outlets for a statement and I have until now been reluctant to speak, and I can understand that. Because of the way that my family have been attacked in the media, and whatever I say will be taken out of content. My heart definitely goes out to them. It is my hope that what I am about to say does not get edited and will be made public in its entirety." And we're going to read it in its entirety. She starts off by saying, "We, the family of Daryl Brooks, want to give our condolences to the families of those whose lives were so tragically taken, and all of those who were injured, as well as the community of Waukesha." And I know I'm pronouncing this wrong. Waukesha. "We are deeply saddened, and our hearts are torn to pieces over what happened on a day set aside for a community to come together and celebrate. No matter what you feel or no matter what you think, I think our heart can go out to this family. Okay? We don't know this family, but our heart can go out to them, because imagine how they feel. Okay? What was meant to be a joyous day became a day of tragedy and heartache, a day that we wish with all our heart would have never happened." She starts by saying that Darrell did not come from a bad family like many people have said. He came from a long Christian family and is the grandson of ministers. Let me stop there. Mental illness does not care what type of family you came from. You could have come from a bad family or a good family. It does not matter. Mental illnesses impact all people of races, religions. Christians, people who believe Jesus Christ, who accepted Jesus Christ as Lord, can become mentally ill. Okay, can be diagnosed with a mental disorder. Just like you can be a Christian and be living with diabetes, you can be a Christian and have COVID. You can be a Christian and who have complications from childbirth. Whatever you're sick, these bodies get sick. That's just the bottom line. Our brains sometimes get sick. So I just want to say that from here. I appreciate his mom wanting people to know that he came from a good family. I think that's wonderful. And he came from a Christian family. And the fact that he came from a good family, from a Christian home, hopefully that will help him give him some support and comfort, and the family some support and comfort as they deal with this tragedy. Want to say Darrell has suffered from mental health issues since he was very young. Let me stop here. We talked all the time on this broadcast about how mental illnesses usually start when a person is young. That's why it's so important that we begin to have conversations with our young people. That's why it's so important that we become aware of what the symptoms are, what's going on with our young person. Because mental illnesses do start many times when a person is young. Okay, we start seeing symptoms. What happens for far too many is that when they start experiencing symptoms, before they know they have language about what's going on with them, they may start developing negative coping skills. These negative coping skills could involve drugs, it can involve alcohol, it could involve driving fast, or just all types of bad things. And these coping skills that they learn as a young person, that they use to deal with their untreated symptoms of their mental illness, travel with them, or just get worse as they get older. Another reason why we want to get a person help as soon as possible, because many mental health disorders are treatable. So when we talk about treatable, some treatments may involve medications, a lot may not. Some may just be having a conversation, some with a therapist, some maybe one time with a doctor, or some with a peer. So again, but it's important to identify what's going on. Untreated mental health disorders in young people can lead to a whole host of problems. It can lead to homelessness. It can lead to problems with relationships. It can lead to problems with school. It can lead to acting out. It can cause people to drop out. It can just a whole lot of issues that a young person with an untreated mental illness can have, and that these issues follow them into adulthood. So again, many people, this story of Daryl Brooks, the way the mother is describing it, can describe so many people. I think what I know I did, but some of you may be new to the broadcast, but I shared on one of these broadcasts about someone I knew here in our particular area. I knew the parents; these were good parents. Their son was a person, and again, it's not about being good or bad parents, okay? But they were. They loved their son. They did everything they could for him. Their son was I think the number one in his class, was smart, had gotten a full scholarship to go to University of Penn. Smart kid. Okay, he was an only child. Well, he's alive now, but he was an only child. He went to school, first year of college, and that's where he had his first quote-unquote psychotic break. Now, what happens is there's something that's called a stress vulnerability model. Many times parents will say, my child was fine until they went away to school. They were fine until they went away to the military. They were fine until something happened. Unfortunately, many times the child may not have ever really been fine, but what happens is we're used to our loved one. Many of us have a friend or a family member that we may, we know they might be, where I'm from, we might say a little off or a little touched or something is wrong with them, but they're our family members. They're okay. It's not a problem. And as long as that family member is in a protective environment that they're used to, then they're fine. It's not until they go away to an environment that's new to them, where they don't know people, where you start seeing the stress. So what happens is, we talk about the stress vulnerability model, means that they're vulnerable to having a full-blown mental health diagnosis, but they're fine until something stressful happens. And what are you talking about stress? Stress, going away to college, going into the military, going into a new environment. It's a change. So equate stress with change. Until there's a change happens, they're fine. So they're away now, and they don't know anybody. Nobody knows them. And because we're not used to them, we're able to notice that things a little faster than maybe their loved ones could, or we notice it a little different, or maybe we're not as patient. We meaning the people who didn't grow up with your loved one. So a lot of times you may not realize it. This happens. Kids go away to school. He went away to school, had the psychotic break, came home, and again, there's a process to accepting any illness, any long-term illness. When his parents, he himself got the diagnosis, of course he didn't want to accept it. He was young, just like a lot of people, especially when you're a higher functioning person. I'm going to say higher function, but especially when you've done well, you've been able to accomplish certain things, and when somebody's telling you that you're sick or telling you that you have a diagnosis, sometimes rather than learning about your diagnosis and learning how to live with it and moving forward, people reject it. And for some people, it takes them a cycle. Just like with drug abuse, people will start off and saying, "I don't have a problem with drugs, I'm fine," okay, and then they hit rock bottom, and then they get into treatment. And then they're in treatment for a while, they're clean, and then their old drug brain fools them and makes them think that they're okay. So they stop their treatment, they stop their meetings, I'm fine, and then they relapse, and then they go through the cycle all over again. Sometimes that happens. No change comes easy, okay? So sometimes that happens. But this is what happened to this young man. So we were telling him, encouraging him, hey, stay off from the semester, because the school had given him the semester. Take the semester off. Don't rush back. Let's get your medications for a while. You may not have to take them forever. Just kind of working with him. They wanted to rush back. He rushed back, had a second psychotic episode, lost his scholarship. And make a long story short, this young man was wound up, was arrested. What was he arrested for? He had murdered a young lady. He was a young man, murdered a young lady who was walking a dog. Okay, when the police went to arrest him, it was easy because all they had to do, from what I understand, was follow the blood trail. And he was in his house watching TV. The knife was over there. He had become so he went from someone who was number one in top of his class, full ride to University of Penn, brilliant young man, to now someone who's now will spend the rest of his life in jail. Why? Because of an untreated or poorly treated mental health illness. His parents tried. They tried to get him. They did get him help, but they tried to even go further and go through the process of what do you call it? Oh gosh, it escapes me. Taking away his rights, so they can kind of get him committed against his will, and that happened for a while, and that's another process we'll talk about some other time. But it's a lot of things that go into this. It's not that easy, because I want people who don't know. It's not just saying you can encourage, you want your loved one to get help, but when we're talking about adult, it can be challenging. Okay, so because you got so many different things. Okay, you, the loved one, saying this person needs help. You got this person over here saying I don't need help. You got the judges, you got lawyers, and keep in mind, when a person gets, let's back this up. Let's just say you call, you're able to get your loved one at least to the hospital. That doesn't mean they're committed. All that means is that they're at the hospital so they can be evaluated. They can stay there for a few hours, or they can stay there for up to 48, 72. It just varies, okay? So they're at the hospital. Let's say you get them to the hospital. They're there. The doctor comes out. The doctor may not agree with you. Let me back all the way up, okay? I didn't want to get into this, but since we're here, what happens if you have a loved one, okay? You feel a loved one is someone that you're concerned about. You want to get them to the hospital. They don't want to go, right? You can, depending on where you live, you can call the crisis team. The crisis team may come out. But every jurisdiction does not have a crisis team, number one. Number two, if there's any issue of dangerousness, the crisis team is going to call the police anyway. So you may wind up having just to call the police. So the police come out. Let me just say this. Well, I'll come back to this. So you call the police. The police come out. I think the police do a wonderful job dealing with people with a severe mental illness. I know we have some challenges, we have some problems, but think about it. Why do the police need to come out? For me, and I'll say this over and over again, anytime the police have to come out and deal with a mental health crisis, then the system has failed. I'll say that again. The police should be the last resort. So that means if you have to call 911 on your loved one, that means somebody didn't do their job. The system has failed along the way. Somebody failed that person. Because the police should not have to be the first responders. Where was the loved one? Where was the family member? Where was the therapist? What happened to the judges? What happened to the lawyers? What happened? Again, I'll talk about that some other time. But let's say you're able to get your person, loved one, the police come, they agree, they take the person against their will, because the police are the only people that can, at least in America, that can take a person against their will to the hospital. So now they're at the hospital, more than likely they're at the emergency room. They're going to wait at the emergency room. They're going to wait until somebody comes down and talk to them. That doctor who sees them at the emergency room, that doctor or clinical social worker, whoever's doing that evaluation, may decide that person doesn't need to be admitted, which is a whole nother story, but let's just say they were admitted. That person is admitted, they're only admitted initially for a 48, 72 hour hold. If that doctor decides that, okay, this person needs to be admitted longer, now we got to look at another process. We're looking at more of a commitment process. That person is going to get a lawyer. Okay, a lawyer assigned to that person that is supposed to be helping them with their rights. So again, when you talk about, before we start blaming family members for not doing enough, keep in mind that the many challenges that they have to face sometimes, not all the time, because there are some family members who don't do enough. But then there are some family members like the Brooks family, like the family I'm referring to, who did do a lot. But just know this, there's a lot of variables that go into this. The person is at the hospital, the doctor may decide they want to kind of commit them. Now this person gets a lawyer that's basically, the job is to make sure this person is not being held against their will, and their job is to get the person out of the hospital. And then the hospital has a lawyer, or the mental health authority has a lawyer, and their job is to keep the person in the hospital, right? And then you have the judge. So you have the judge, you have 2 lawyers, you have the person. Depending on what that person says, depending on how things go, how they present, depending on a lot of variables, that judge agree that, okay, now we don't need to hold him or her against their will. There's a lot of things that can happen, okay? But going back to the person I was talking about, before I get more into the Daryl Brooks issue, the family tried. They tried all of this. They would get their loved one committed. The hospital would let them out. They would get the person committed again. The hospital let them out. It can be tiring. This can be a tiring process, okay? Let me come back to this. Come back reading Daryl Brooks's this letter that his mother wrote. Like she said, he suffered from mental health issues since he was very young. Same thing with the person I'm referring to. Same thing with so many people. This is so many people's story. In those years, he received counseling and was on medication. When he became an adult, a decision was made that he no longer suffered from a mental illness. Now, I don't know who made that decision. That decision left him with no insurance or financial means to pay for medication and would determine necessary counseling. Mental illness is not cheap to treat, but what's more important, dollars spent on treatment and recourse or lives lost. This is what I want to say to family members. If you get in this situation, you have to cry loud, cry consistently. And I mean cry, I'm talking about make your voice known. Because what more than likely happened here, just based on what she was saying, when he became an adult, a decision was made that he no longer suffered from a mental illness. What probably happened is that once he became, what more than likely happened, because usually what happens when a person gets from a child to an adult, there's paperwork that needs to be filled out. Somebody didn't complete the paperwork. So it's easier to say that a decision was made that he no longer suffered from mental illness, okay? Somebody didn't follow through. Somebody wasn't on these people. Because if you find yourself in a situation, he needs mental health treatment. You need to become aggressive. Not aggressive in a bad way, but you need to become, militant, so to speak, on behalf of your loved one or your family member or your friend or even yourself. No. I have some of my people that I work with who are diagnosed or living with a mental illness. They have no problem calling the mayor. They have no problem calling the governor. Yeah, and this is what you have to do. You need to cry aloud and spare not. Don't let people just tell you something and then you accept it. Okay? Because see, we don't want to keep making excuses. We know our mental health system is broken. Some places it's better than others. Everybody now want to try to use that excuse that our mental health system is broken. We know it's broken. We want to use that excuse we can't get mental health medications. That's not true. You can get mental health medications. Okay, we can't get insurance. If you're poor, you can get mental health. You can get insurance. All right, you can get Medicaid. If all else fails, you can go to the hospital, to the emergency room. There are so many things that you can do, but you cannot take no for an answer. You can't let people just tell you anything. Okay, so I don't know. I'm just reading between the lines because this has happened to other people I know. Okay, you get an adult, now you no longer need to be diagnosed with a mental illness, right? What you do, okay, you remake another appointment with another psychiatrist, you take your records, okay, your young person records at the age of 18, you're now 18, you go over to the adult system, these are my medical records from whatever age to now that I'm 18. I'm still suffering from the symptoms. You see a therapist. You get a free mental health clinic. They may have long lines. You can walk in. You go to your emergency room. We go to the emergency room for everything else. This is serious because we cannot continue to make excuses. We cannot continue to have just situations where people with poorly treated, untreated mental illness, or people who are saying they have mental illness commit these types of crimes. because it hurts all of us, right? So we got to do something about it. We know the challenges, right? We know the challenges. We cannot continue to make excuses. I'm not talking about his parents. I'm talking about us as a society. We have to do something about it. And I'm telling you, as your loved one, don't accept no for an answer, okay? Because there's something that could be done. Okay? Because if he suffered from mental health issues he was young, he was taking counseling, he was on counseling, he was on medication, he became an adult, a decision was made that he no longer suffered from mental illness. Well, either you had mental illness or you didn't. Something is going on. That decision left him with no insurance or financial means to pay for medication and one determined necessary counseling. I don't understand this, because if he didn't have any mental illness, then we wouldn't have to worry about insurance or financial means to pay for medication. But if it came to that point, you could get mental health help. Okay, log on to our website, igbatt.com. We have a connection with SAMHSA, a 1-800 number that you can reach out to. There are so many within the United States ways that you can get treatment without having money. Okay. Mental illness is not cheap to treat. No, it's not. We have so many community mental health programs. We have so many county mental health programs. People may say, oh, well, we don't have them in my county. Well, then go to another county. Okay. I went there and blah, blah, blah. They said this. Call the mayor's office. Call the governor's office. You know, it may seem like I'm saying, this lady sounding so extreme. No. What was extreme to have 5 or 6 people killed by a person who has a mental illness, who purports to have a mental illness, because they're saying that they weren't able to get their medication, he wasn't able to get treatment. That's a problem, right? So again, where was I at? Instead of offering help and resources to combat the problem, a jail cell was given, of course. And let me say this over and over again. So instead of getting resources to combat the problem, he was given a jail cell. Unfortunately, that is what happens. Too many of our people with mental illnesses, especially severe and persistent mental illnesses, wind up in jail for petty crimes. Some of them wind up with crimes that are more severe. The jails in the United States have become some of the biggest resources of mental health providers. Now, here's the thing. When you go to jail, you usually are connected with mental health resources on the way out. So I don't know what happened, but things go wrong. Okay? When mental illness is not properly treated, the person becomes sicker and sicker. That is true. It doesn't, or that could be true, depending on the illness. It doesn't go away once a person becomes an adult, which is true. Which is why I'm talking about you who's watching me, and you may have a loved one in this situation. Do not let the system cut your kid off when they turn 18. If they were diagnosed with a mental illness while they were in high school, they were taking medication, seeing a counselor, then you need to find out what paperwork needs to be completed so that they can continue to receive the services that they need, okay? Because especially when we talk about psychosis. She goes on to say, we're not making excuses, but we believe what has happened is because he was not given the help and resources he needed. Institutions that are equipped and have trained staff is what was needed, as well as resources in the communities where people who suffer with mental illness live. Jail is not the answer, because they get released back in society sicker than when they entered. Yes, jail is not the answer, because that is not the purpose of jail. Jail was not designed to treat people with mental illness. Police officers were not designed to be not pro bono, but designed to be mental health professionals, so to speak. That's not their job. Okay, so again, you're correct. I think we all know jail is not the answer. I think we all know that police officers should not be the first resort, that there should be other resources in place for them. We all know that. But unfortunately, that's where we are in America, right? And then she goes on to say, we all see what a tragedy that can turn out to be. We as a society must take mental illness seriously by fixing a broken system or suffer the consequences. Sad as it is to say, what happened in Waukesha, will keep happening all over this country in one form or another, with more innocent lives lost and grieving families and communities. Mental illness is real, and the system is broken. It can and must be fixed now, not next year or with a new legislation now. So many like Darrell that have fallen through the cracks because of a broken system that no one cared to address and get the help they so desperately need. Mental illness affects every walk of life and dwells in every community. It lives in our homes, it lives next door, it is in our schools, the grocery store, shopping malls, movie theater, and other places of worship. What next, you say? First, our hearts have to heal, and we have to come together, roll up our sleeves, and get to work and do whatever is necessary to fix a system that has for far too long been broken. Myself and my family pray that our Lord and Savior Jesus comfort and strengthen each of you and give you all peace that is beyond understanding. And she went on to say, I ask respectfully that the media please do not invade my home, not to call or send emails. Myself and my family members need out time to grieve as well. Don Woods and the family may God bless each and every one of you. I think this is a wonderful letter from his mother, and I know it took probably a lot for her to write. And I wanted to just take this one step further as saying she is totally right. But we know this. We have to start doing something about it now. But it can't be. It's not a system. It is a system issue. It's not a federal issue. Each state has to take a look at what's going on in this particular state, and then each county has to take a look at it, and each city. Okay, so everyone has to kind of get involved and kind of figure this out. Unfortunately, people don't really get involved with a crisis until it's a crisis. Right now, okay, people are talking about mental health. Unfortunately, we don't talk about severe mental illness. What do I mean by severe mental illness? By definition, these are illnesses that are so severe and so persistent that they impact all aspects of a person's life, and they invade. They last a long time. These were the individuals who may have difficulty with keeping a job, maintaining relationships, etc., etc. So again, what am I saying? What is the message here? Number one, if you are a loved one and you know you have a family member who has a untreated mental illness, poorly treated mental illness, or a psychotic mental illness, meaning they out of touch with reality in particular, and they live with you, you're connected with them, then we are charging you to kind of not just be their buddy, but be their advocate. I'm charging you to find out what are the resources in your area, the things that you can use in the event of emergency. Find out what the local mental health clinics are. If they're connected to a mental health clinic, find out the name of their therapist. Go with them to an appointment one time so that you can get your name on the list as someone that they can talk to, meaning that you can call. So that way, if your loved one is in the home and they're having a psychotic episode or they're becoming unwell, you can call that local clinic. Okay? I want you also to not take no for an answer. Don't give up. Don't just get tired. Don't get overwhelmed. Because a friend of mine, my partner who usually does this with me, Minister Kelly, one of the things I asked her, I said, she has a husband who's diagnosed with schizophrenia, and I asked her, I said, well, what would you say? What is one of the things that as a family member, as a loved one, that you would need to deal with this? And she said one word: endurance. Endurance. You have to have endurance, right? So I'm saying to family members, loved ones, you have to have endurance. You need to get involved. You need to talk to your loved one before they become unwell. Find out what the resources are. Don't just take no for an answer. If you need, well, we went down there, I tried to get a bed, I couldn't get a bed. No. And if you feel that they need to get a bed, then you need to get on the phone, call all of a sudden that local mental health clinic will reach out to you. You have to be aggressive. You can't just take no for an answer when it comes to your loved one, especially when you know that this person has a propensity to be violent. Okay, you have to do something about it. You can't just just brush things off. If you are the person, okay, who's listening to me, as a part of our team here, we have people who are diagnosed with mental illness and with schizophrenia, with bipolar, and they're living well. Okay, they're Christians, they're believers. Some of them are not, but they're living well, and they understand and manage your symptoms. But until that time, it's up to us as a society. We have to demand certain things. But unfortunately, we don't do that until there is a crisis. So I just wanted to kind of share this letter to one, and also to let you know that sometimes when we see things happen in society like that, the family did try. Again, how much they tried, I'm not talking about the Brooks family, but just in general, how much they tried, I don't know. Some families get overwhelmed much easier because it is a tiring process, okay? This has been It's Getting Better All the Time, mental health outreach, providing information and support while encouraging hope and faith. You can log on to our website at igbatt.com. Looks like we're having some problems here, so hopefully I'm still going. But again, log on to our website. Also on Tuesdays and Thursdays, we have a information support line where you can call every Tuesday and Thursday from 10:30 to 1:30. The number is on our website, igbatt.com. We can provide you with some information in your particular area. We can also pray with you if you desire prayer. And I think that's it for now. This has been It's Getting Better All the Time, mental health outreach, igbatt.com. Remember, you do have a reason and a purpose for living. God bless you.